Right now is a very busy and exciting time for loons. In Minnesota, during late May or early June, breeding pairs start nesting. We have already witnessed loon chicks on local lakes, and some loons are still incubating eggs on the nest. So, why are people studying them, and how do they impact our local lake ecosystems?
Important question. The researchers believe that loons are a biosentinel or indicator species of a healthy lake ecosystem because loons need to have very clean water, clear water, and a diversity of fish of all different sizes in order for them to raise chicks. Loons are not related to ducks at all. Loons are very different than ducks. They have special features and adaptations. Their bill is specially designed to pierce fish and grab fish. It has a serrated edge. Their feet are not in the middle of their body like a duck. Their feet are way at the back, kind of looking prehistoric. They cannot walk on the rocks, or they can't walk on land at all. They can't land in a tree and stand. They're very different than the duck family. They have a special oil way in the back of their tail area that they use for coating themselves so that they are waterproof in cold water. They have a special red eye that makes them a little different than some of the other animals. They hunt by sight. They have a nictitating membrane over the eye. They have mostly solid bones, not totally solid, but mostly solid bones, which make them very heavy. They're not good at flying as much as they're good at submarining under the water and being a torpedo predator underneath the water. So they're very different than a duck. Loons have at least 4 different calls. The yodel call sounds really wild, and it usually has a lot of energy behind it. It's only done by the male. So the yodel call's only done by the male, and it usually means this is my territory and I am willing to defend it. I will defend it sometimes to the death. The wail call is also done by both the male and female, and the wail call kind of sounds like 1 note or 2 notes. Some people get it mixed up with a wolf kind of howling. That call usually is a contact call. They can be checking in with their partner on the same lake, or they can be checking in with neighbors on a nearby lake. That's the wail call, done by both the male and female. The tremolo call is done by both the male and female, and it usually means something is going on. There's some kind of danger, an eagle in a tree somewhere, an eagle overhead. The tremolo's done by both the male and female. It also is the only one done in flight. So they might be asking, is it okay to land here on this lake? That's another reason for the tremolo or a variation of the tremolo. The hoot call is a really soft sound, and it's usually done between the male and female if they're partners. It's also done to chicks, and it's very close, kind of checking in with each other call. It also is sometimes done in socializing groups or migrating groups when they're bonding with each other before or during migration. That's the hoot call. Each pair of loons needs at least 100 acres. So sometimes 100 to 200 acres. If it's a large lake, there could be several loons or several loon pairs on a lake. If it's a small lake, of 100 acres, then that one pair will take the whole lake. And if it's a really tiny lake without enough fish, they will take several lakes, several small lakes, and try to defend them. Obviously, a little bit harder to do that. But there is definitely a habitat. They need a special kind of shoreline. It can't be very steep with lots of rocks. It has to be somewhere where they can just reach and get to their nest. Since they don't walk on land at all, they need to be able to just be 6 to 12 inches from the water line. So it's a very special habitat that they need for their northern success for reproduction. During migration, or the beginning of migration, as the fall seasons start to happen, there's also a very exciting time. The chicks have turned into juveniles, so they don't even look the same. They're all gray, just like the adults that also turn gray. Now, if the adults do not have chicks at all, then they might start migrating, socializing with their little migrating tiny group early, like even the end of August, where if the loon adults have a chick, they wait until they're juveniles and everyone's kind of gray in the later fall. Then the male adult loon will usually leave first, usually up here in the Midwest, usually end of September. The female mother of the chick will usually leave the beginning of October. Then the chick, which is a juvenile at that point, all gray, will just stay as long as they need to stay to finish developing. They have to get flight feathers in. They have to make sure they can fish and get a lot of food and get ready for their very first migration. And then they sometimes find other juveniles to hang out with to do their first migration. When they migrate, our loons in the Midwest usually go along a special flyway. They're not quite sure how they do this, but they stop at lakes to rest. So they could go, one of the longest ones recorded with a geolocator on their leg band was 650 miles, 8 hours straight, without a rest at all, constantly flapping because they don't soar at all, going 73 miles an hour with a tailwind. So that's the biggest amount of time. Other times they'll stop at other lakes to try to rest for a couple days. Usually the migration going down in the fall to the southern states or the East Coast southern states, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. There's a lot of our Midwestern migrating loons. The Gulf of Mexico is also a big place for our migrating loons. And they're down there for almost 6 months, almost the same amount of time that they're up here. And of course down there they have salt water to deal with. So the migration time is kind of lackadaisical, a little more easygoing, where in the spring migration, they usually go very fast. They want to get on their favorite lakes, usually closer to a lake that they were hatched from, their natal lakes, and they're really booking it as fast as possible. That's why they're in right at ice out.
This week's Ask the Naturalist question comes from Tammy. Why is the loon Minnesota's state bird? In 1961, the loon was declared as Minnesota's state bird. Other birds have been nominated previously, such as the eastern goldfinch in 1947 and the wood duck in 1951, but there was never as much interest as the loon. With the land of 10,000 lakes, it is a symbol of Minnesota culture and is often associated with the North Woods. The loon is a symbol for the state's soccer team, Minnesota United, and is pictured on the America the Beautiful quarter series, representing the state and Voyageurs National Park.
I hope you've been able to learn a few things about our Minnesota emblem here, the loon, and I encourage you to make a difference for this indicator species that we have on our northern lakes. For instance, you can donate time and go visit your favorite lake once a week and do some citizen scientists research for the Minnesota DNR. So just go ahead and contact Minnesota DNR non-game, and they can set you up. You can pick whatever lake you want, and it's part of the Loon Watcher program here in Minnesota. Also, if you're a student, there's also things you can do. Just keeping your eyes and ears open and learning more and observing. The students here at LEC, at Laurentian Environmental Center, had helped us a great deal last year when they found a couple of the dead loons here on our lake, and we were able to collect those bodies and get them to veterinarian diagnostic lab, and found out that they died due to West Nile virus. So you too can be a big help on citizen scientists for this amazing bird.
Thank you guys very much for tuning in to Lessons Laurentian this week and learning more about loons. I want to thank again Sherry for being here and taking her time and effort in sharing her knowledge on loons. Next week we are going to be talking about bats. Make sure too that you check out the show notes. We will have details on different loon calls, websites you can visit to get more involved. So be sure to check that out and take care and see you next time.